Hello everyone, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the support on the last couple of videos, and holy fucking shit, I can't believe Five Nights at Freddy's is here. I'm actually super hyped for this, and this is very awesome sauce. Anyways, with all that excitement out of the way, let's go back to the past a little bit and talk about the lead up, leaks, and release of A Portrait of a Murder, a very unique Dead by Daylight chapter. So, let me set the mood. It was October 2021, and it had been a few months since the release of the last chapter, Hellraiser, and the other paragraph, The Hour of the Witch, that introduced Michaela Reed, and something that still gives me a headache when I think about it. As much as I joke about the reception of the Hellraiser chapter, it was a really cool paragraph, but now that it's gone, it's kind of bittersweet, but hey, as long as he can still come.
Open the box, and I came.
But we were quickly approaching chapter teaser season, something that more recently feels like it's almost been completely absent in the past year due to Behavior not wanting to put out any teasers because of the leaks. But because of the more recent moves by Behavior to end leaks forever, we might see chapter teasers again, which would be amazing. But anyways, back to the original teasers. Behavior started posting some artwork showing off some crows. Hello, crow! Okay then. They also posted some of the artwork to this website. And look, it even has a small description about the artist. C. Mora was born in Chile, gaining notoriety during the 1970s after a series of surrealistic and radically political murals caught the public's attention. Little is known about Mora, but the artist's works have mostly disappeared over the years. Well, that's really cool. The new killer is definitely going to be crow themed. And it's definitely going to be connected to Chile, especially because they also posted the coordinates to an abandoned mining town in Chile. Well, in that case, it looks like we're going to get some artists from Chile with an abandoned mining town map. That sounds pretty cool. With the PTB just around the corner, we won't have to wait very long, and never mind. Just like always, it got leaked. Someone under the username Black Veil Leaks posted to Twitter literal development screenshots for the next upcoming chapter. And in these development screenshots, we can see the brand new killer, some girl with ink hands and a crow power. Hello, crow! Huh? What? Anyways, there was also this pic of her feet, because of course, this is Behavior we're talking about. There was also a photo of her performing her Mori with no clothes, and a couple photos of the upcoming survivor. Welp, because of those leaks, there was also a lot of images of an upcoming map, apparently for chapter 23, that being a cemetery that I guess links to the Conjuring, and I guess we're getting the nun for chapter 23.
You've got mail.
Oh, wait a minute, something just showed up in my mail. Let me go check. Oh, never mind, it's a videotape. Let me watch it. Oh, never mind. It's not the nun, but what about the cemetery map? Well, moving along a little bit, we would finally receive a teaser for the chapter, and even though it was basically all leaked, it was a teaser that obviously didn't really tell us much because it got leaked, but it's really quick and I'll play it for you now. But after that, we would shortly receive the PTB for A Portrait of a Murder that would introduce the new killer, the artist, new survivor, Johan Vasquez, and the brand new realm, the Forsaken Boneyard, with the brand new map, the Eyrie of Crows. And trust me, I have some beautifully handpicked words for that map, so let's go over all of the content that this chapter added to the game. Starting off with the newest killer, the artist. One of the most unique looks we've ever gotten for a killer. She's a tall woman who's missing her arms and her feet, and well, I bet Behavior took her feet and are hiding them somewhere. And to replace her arms and feet, she has ink arms and feet. And if you're wondering why ink, because she's an artist, you fucking dumbass. Oh yeah, and they cut her tongue out too, so she sounds like a bird. Speaking of which, her lore is very dark. Her whole life, she was basically grief-ridden about her younger brother's death. So she stays close with her friends, she becomes a painter, and then one day all of her friends, including herself, get kidnapped, tortured, and killed until she gets taken by the entity. Typical fun stuff. Funny enough, she got kidnapped by the Black Veil cult. For lore reasons, this is important, but because of what the leakers named themselves, I think this is pretty funny. Unlike some other killers, her power is very simplistic. The artist can place up to 3 crows that she can shoot anywhere across the map. If the crow is in a direct line of sight of the survivor, shooting the bird will injure them, but if they're already injured, it will down them. But if the bird goes through a wall or is just out of range, the birds will latch onto the survivors. When birds are latched onto a survivor, they surround the survivor, and the survivor can do an action to repel them off, or just jump into a locker to remove them completely. But if a bird-latched survivor gets hit by crows going through walls or at any range, it will hit the survivor and take a health state. And that's basically her power. But what about her perks? Well, surprisingly, the artist has what I would consider some of the best perks. To start off with, we have Grim Brace. Each survivor is hooked for the first time. You gain a token upon reaching 4 tokens Grim Brace activates, blocking all generators for 30 seconds and revealing the Obsession's aura to you for 4 seconds. Scourge Hook, Pain Resonance. 4 random hooks are changed into Scourge Hooks. Anytime a survivor is hooked on a Scourge Hook, the generator with the most amount of progress will instantly lose 15% of its progress and will instantly regress. If any survivor was working on the generator, they will scream. Ah yes, my beloved Hex Penimento. For every time a survivor destroys a totem, you can relight it. 1 relit totem will slow down all generators by 30, 2 relit totems will slow down healing by 30, 3 will slow down recovery speed by 30, 4 will reduce the escape speed by 30, and 5 will block off all the totems, keeping the effects permanent. Now, that's all of her perks out of the way, and mostly everything to have to do with the killer side of this chapter. So, for the survivor, we received Johan Vasquez. Not the most popular pick among survivors, but he kind of looks like Otz, so it's funny. Now, like I say all the time, survivors are just reskins, but his lore as a codebreaker for the CIA and how that ties into the artist I think is really cool. But let's just go over Jonah's perks, starting off with Overcome. When you are injured, you retain your movement speed bonus for an extra 2 seconds. Corrective Action. You start the trial with 1 token and gain a token up to a maximum of 5. For every great skill check, when a survivor who is cooperating with you fails a skill check, it will correct it to a good skill check. Boon Exponential. All survivors within the boon's totem range will recover 90% faster and completely recover from the dying state. And with the survivor and the killer out of the way, the last main piece of content we have to focus on is the map, and man, do I have a lot to say. Firstly, this is one of the few Dead by Daylight maps that take place during the day. Not that that's necessarily a problem, but on launch it was one of the biggest maps in the game with some insane interconnected loops, and don't even get me started about the old backside of that main building. It was one of the most dreadful maps to play on as killer, and honestly still is to this day, because of the amount of survivors who still bring the fucking crow's eye. But even after numerous reworks that has balanced the map and has made it a bit more fair, it's still very unforgiving to certain killers, and more recently we've just received Dead Sands, which is basically just Record's Yard with a sandy coat of paint, which is honestly a pretty good and balanced map. But of course, from PTB to live, we would of course get some changes to the content, but it wasn't that drastic. The only main differences between the PTB and the live was the artist had her power limitation zone around hook survivors extended to 10 meters. Swarmed survivors who now contact an idle crow now have their repel action reset instead of getting injured, and Grim Brace blocks generators for 40 seconds instead of the 30 it originally did, and it increased the Obsession reveal from 4 seconds to 5 seconds. I know it wasn't changed in this update, but I want to mention it here. Before the ability for flashlights to interact with killer powers was removed, like removing hag traps with flashlights, you could originally shine flashlights at the artist's birds to remove them, but this was sadly removed, but it makes sense. And lastly, Penimento now works properly, because there was a problem where it just didn't even fucking work. But I mean, that makes sense, this is behavior after all. And that's everything that we received in A Portrait of a Murder, going forward to where we are today. But while going over these chapters, they add some pretty insane stuff that might not be there on the chapter's original launch that happens down the line because of balance changes or updates or whatever that's worth highlighting and talking about just a little bit more. And starting off, of course, we're going to talk about Scourge Hook Pain Resonance. So, not too long after, Pain Resonance, commonly just referred to as Pain Res, would get nerfed, making survivors not scream when the generator would blow up. They would quickly change it so the survivor does still scream, but it doesn't show the location to the killer. The reason they did this is so killers wouldn't know which generator just got hit with Pain Res, because 99% of all killer players at the time also had old Pop Goes the Weasel. That, I remind you, did 25% of a generator's total progress. So paired with Pain Res, which I neither remind you had no token limit, so you could regress 15 times every time you hooked a survivor on a Pain Res, and then you would gain a pop stack from that. And when you would hit a generator with pop after a Pain Res, you would do a total of 40% of a generator. And you better fucking hope that that killer isn't a super sadistic fuck, because if he also brought Dead Man Switch, you're not going to be able to touch that generator for like another minute, and you're going to lose about 60 to even 70% of that generator. Oh, wait a second, there's something else on this tape. Oh, apparently the next chapter is going to be bringing a brand new perk that's going to make this problem even fucking worse. But eventually, they would change Pain Res to the token-based system that we're all familiar with now, and just overall nerfing how much regression it did to the generator. But the crazy thing to me is how long Pain Res lasted with the infinite use system instead of the token system. But that's not the only perk that got changed that was really good. Grimid Brace went from nothing to something really fast in the 7.5 update, where it basically got a soft rework. Instead of needing to hook every survivor to only just block off the gens for 40 seconds, every time you would hook somebody at all for the first time, it would block off all gens for 12 seconds until you finally get the last person, blocking them all off for 40. After that, the perk got so popular, they even had to nerf it a little bit, but it stays relatively the same, and it's very balanced and one of the best slowdown perks in the game. And Hex Penamento would basically remain untouched for years, until just recently getting very heavily nerfed, mostly because of the problem it caused in solo queue matches. But I think A Portrait of a Murderer added a great amount of good content and a good amount of shit and problems that would eventually get panned out later. And honestly, I consider it a pretty good chapter. Not my favorite or anything, but considering some of the other things Behavior has put out, I'd consider it a pretty good chapter. But also one of the more forgettable ones. And again, I just wanted to thank Josh Prime for recommending this chapter. I don't know exactly when the next chapter, Retrospective, will be out, but I'll have a vote between the two next chapters for the next one, starting with one of the worst releases of a chapter in Dead by Daylight history, A Binding of Kin. But on the other end of the vote, we have one of the most successful releases in Dead by Daylight history, being All Things Wicked. That poll is up right now under the community tab if you want to go vote. And if you want to subscribe while you're there, that would be very much appreciated. But with all that being said, I really want to bring up this very important point of Behavior! Please, please, please add a Phantom of the Opera skin for Chucky. Thank you all so much for watching, and goodbye.